let's start the recording. So,
Mm-hmm.
good afternoon and welcome to our July 1st Friday, and delighted to say that our guest this afternoon is Jacob Mortensen from AdPlenty, who is going to be sharing his knowledge, experience, expertise of social media and social media management in franchise networks, with obviously multi-franchisees all wanting to do the same things and different things, and potentially how franchisors can manage that and harness it in a positive light. So I shall pass over to you now, Jacob. Jacob's going to lead the meeting from here, and Jacob has expressed a desire for people to ask questions as he's working through, either putting them in the chat box, shouting out, putting your hand up, whichever you prefer. Feel free to ask questions, or alternatively, feel free to save the questions till the end, or stick them in the chat box, and we'll come to them at the end, towards the end anyway. So welcome, Jacob, and
Thank you.
To you.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Yeah, I like to when I'm doing these things, I kind of like to do it as obviously there's a story that I would like to take you through, but keep it as a conversation. So if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand or ask them, because I feel that's maybe even more natural. But otherwise, as Julie said, feel free to say them till the end. And Julie, thank you for inviting me to do this first Friday. A little bit about who I am. I'm a chief commercial officer with a SaaS company based in Denmark, so a software as a service company. My background is many years ago I worked on the marketing side, in the agency side, but most of my career I've spent working in franchising and retail. I put a little to stay fully digital. There's a little QR code there at the bottom, so feel free to connect with me, or or otherwise just find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect. So working for many years in franchising and retail, you might wonder, how I ended up in the startup world and in the tech industry. In my career, I've been part of very exciting business journeys, from complete turnarounds where everything was virtually in pieces and we had to rebuild the entire business inside out. The kitchen franchise business, our managing director used the word Control Alt Delete, which meant that we basically had to find new franchisees, new leases, everything, flip the business around inside out. We spent 5 years doing that. We sold the business, and I felt it was time for me to leave, because everything was in place. But I've also been fortunate enough to spend quite a few years in very well developed franchising. I had 4 or 5 years in an international kitchen retail chain, who taught me the ropes, I would say, about franchising, about the importance of managing things in processes, procedures, having a handbook for pretty much everything. So it came to a stage where we would open a new store in France, and we could do that within 3 months from a new franchisee was identified. Everyone knew what they had to do. So I think that they're up to 13, 14 countries today, that business. I've always been a very strong believer that in multi-location of franchising, the strength of the brand comes down to local affinity, and that's really what I try to talk about today. How well each branch of a business manages to connect with its local community. There's huge potential in that, but there's also a lot of challenges that we'll try to cover. So that has really always been a guiding principle for me, working both as a marketing and sales director in franchising. So a few years back, I was leaving the franchising world, and came into contact with AdPlenty, the company I work with today, and it was actually the founder Susan reached out to me because she was pitching me the product, and didn't realize I was actually leaving the company. But I was curious and said, tell me more, and got very interested in that company. And to make a very long story, short, she instead of me being a client, she hired me, and now I'm part of the business. We're still a young business, founded in 2017, based out of Copenhagen, Denmark. We work internationally. One of our large clients is Specsavers that we work with in 7 countries. And we really, what we work with is automating processes for local digital marketing. Okay, so today, what I would like to do, I will try to talk a little bit about running local marketing at scale, and also, how you can use that to attract potential franchisees. Try to look at the challenges franchise businesses often face when they want to do local marketing. One of the things that franchisors are often a little bit worried about: how do we stay in control of our brand when we want to execute local marketing at scale? I'll try to give you some insights and some recommendations that I consider important for franchise businesses that want to harness the power of local digital marketing. And finally, I'll just talk about 2 cases that the UK-based companies that we've different companies that we've helped, and how they are approaching it, and hopefully you'll get some insights, get some ideas, or things you didn't know of before, or just give some input to to how you can do that in your own business. So let's have a quick look at the social media landscape in the UK, just to a quick glance. And today I realized that the social media landscape is vast, and there are so many outlets and so many different channels. Today I'm gonna primarily be talking about the Meta platforms. So let's just have a look at the penetration. Out of roughly 69 million people in the UK, more than 80% are actually users on the of Facebook. They have an account, and more than 42 million are on LinkedIn, but almost 40 million people on WhatsApp. And the discrepancy between the numbers on the left and the right are users. So the numbers on the left are people having an account, and the one you see on the right is usage. And by far, I mean, the UK is one of I think the countries in the world with the highest penetration of WhatsApp in terms of use. And I'm sure you recognize and you all use it for communication, maybe as even as internal groups with your franchisees or in your own businesses. WhatsApp is really a predominant platform. But these numbers is also a point I would like to make. Why you really should look at Meta, and if you're not using it today, why Meta should be part of your marketing mix when we're doing local marketing. So let's see. Oops. Yeah. So aside from having a very large or massive penetration and user base, Meta offers us very unique ways to execute a local marketing strategy. Because when you use Meta, you can actually run simultaneously your campaigns across Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, because it's part of the same ecosystem. Just as when you're using Google owns a lot of different ecosystem, YouTube, the businesses, everything you can run from one account. But it also allows you to set up in Meta geo-targeting around your stores. You can be very specific about the demography that you want to target. So that's why Meta is very interesting when we're talking about local marketing. Because you can personalize messages, and you can create a strong connection with your local audience. And I think for the technical side of it, Meta allows you to actually target down to a mile or 1 kilometer, either which, so you can be rather specific in the areas that you want to target, what makes it even more interesting for franchise businesses with many locations. What I would like to say when you're using when you're working with Meta is it's very important that you're specific about what you want to do. So you need to have a clear idea of, when you go out with a message, what kind of objective do we have? Are we driving awareness, traffic, or do we want conversions? So the way Meta works is it will actually tell you what you can expect in terms of results based on one of the objectives that you like to say, that you want to go out in a local area and say, well, I would really like this campaign to drive traffic towards book an appointment, and you say you spend £1,000, then Meta will tell you what can you expect of conversions. Now, before, in the early days of Facebook and Meta, you would the platform would tell you, we think you should use this budget, because then you will get the results. But in the recent years, they flipped it around and saying you can expect this results if you use this budget. So those things are very important. And I would also like to say, when you're communicating on Meta, it's very important that you're consistent, because you need to align your platforms. I would assume you also use Google, the My Business sites. If you're driving an awareness campaign on Meta, make sure that your store data is updated. It would be a bad experience for a user to trigger a campaign on Meta and then try to locate your store on one of the stores on Google, and the data is not updated. For instance, the address is wrong, the phone number is wrong. It might be from an old franchisee, or opening hours are off. So align activities and pay attention to content. What do I mean by that? I mean, the old saying "content is king" is still very much relevant, at least in my opinion. And experiment with different kinds of content, and make sure you monitor and track performance and adjust your strategy. And these days it's very easy to put pixels to your campaigns or landing pages, because when you log into your Meta dashboard, it will tell you the effects that you achieved from the campaigns. And also, one of the questions that we often get, or at least I hear a lot when I speak to marketers and franchisors and franchisees, is like, what do you recommend, Jacob? Should we just put a lot of posts out there? Do we need to use paid, or should we only use paid, or do we need to do organic? And I wish there was a page in the Meta handbook that you could actually just look to page 54 and say, should I use organic or paid? But there really isn't a clear answer. So you probably need to do both, unless your followers are super enthusiastic and actively engage with every single post you do. Now, as a rule of thumb, the average organic reach is 2.2%. That means if you have 1,000 followers on your page and you post, consistently to those, you will reach an average of 22 people. And why is that? Well, that's because Meta is a business, and they obviously they will give you the results based on what your input is. So if you spend money in advertising, you can target very specifically what you want to do. But on the other hand, if you at the same time do organic posts, those things will kind of have a positive effect on each other. So the short answer here is you need to do both, but it depends on the line of business and your market penetration, how you would weigh those. And I'm sorry I can't give you a very straight answer here, but that's definitely one you need to consider. Okay, so the media channels especially when we talk about Meta, they offer us very direct access to our customers. But there's really so that's the tech part of it. That's that's all the data, and we can single out our customers and we can target very specifically. But there is another ingredient we need to add to the mix, and that's trust and relevance. This gentleman here, Daniel Kahneman, he coined the term behavioral economics, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with him. And what that really is about is it's why and how we make the choices we do as people. So it essentially comes down to that people buy from people. And I do think someone earlier in this forum has made that point, but I would just like to repeat it because it's very important to keep in mind when we're before we get too over enthusiastic about all the exciting things that we can do with the social media platforms and we can do with tech. It's important to to keep in mind that we're doing business with people. So how do we select a car? How do we select a computer? How do we select the phone carrier? Like what lies behind those choices? Why are we buying from those brands exactly? And what selling is really about is, or we as buyers, is that we make our choices with our hearts. Would you say we're very passionate about it, but then we rationalize, or you might even say we defend our purchase afterwards with our brain. So it's two different sides of selling. So you have the tech part, and then you have where you can actually enable the very local marketing approach. But we also have to keep the personal side in mind, that we do a business with people. So if we take this into a local marketing perspective, the majority of multi-location brands or franchise brands, they realize there's great potential to connect with customers on a more personal level, but it's also clear that this applies actually both to customers and potential franchisees, because when you interact with customers from a local marketing perspective, even potential franchisees are in the sense also just people looking for their next move out there, and they're also affected by what they see. So it's important to remember that potential franchisees, they use the same media outlets and platforms as your customers. So you're being noticed, and that can also work in your favor when you're being evaluated as, should a franchisee invest in your business? So almost 80% of multi-location brands believe that the local affinity is important, and that's also supported by data, and a very effective way of connecting with those and people considering investing in your franchise is creating that strong local presence in the community. So basically, we like to do business with brands and people we trust and know, or feel we know, and that's where the local aspect becomes very important. But if that was easy, I would say that all multi-location or franchise brands would just do it and run a successful digital local marketing strategy. But as you might have guessed, it's a little easier said than done. There is actually a fundamental problem when we try to achieve this. Almost the same number, almost 80% or 77%, to be fair, find that it's very very difficult. So it's a little different story from actually realizing that this is important to getting it done. How do we do it? So in the years I was working as a CMO and sales manager in franchising, this was one of the key things I was trying to solve, because I realized that every time we would spend resources, both in terms of money, but also in hours, helping local franchisees set up very localized marketing campaigns, we saw an immediate effect. It had a tremendous effect on the business, but it's very hard to scale this across a network of 20 30, 40, 50, 100 units. That's just impossible. So the main challenge here has become, how do we manage this across a network of franchisees? Because they're often, franchisees, they're entrepreneurs, they're often impatient. And, a lot of them will tend to create their own local marketing if there's no alternative. Or the franchise agreement is unclear. What does local marketing mean? Who is responsible for doing it? And that's actually one of my key points here. A lot of the franchisee agreements that I've been responsible for, I've seen, when it comes down to the passage about marketing, it's really very, very little written down. It says that the franchisee is responsible of marketing the business in line with brand guidelines, or something like that. It may be you may have a different take on that in the contracts that you're working with. The problem here becomes that who's responsible for doing it, and what does it mean to market yourself locally? So you kind of leave it there on the table, leave it out in the open, instead of clearly defining who is responsible of doing it. Because the typical challenges that you actually see when it comes down to doing local marketing is are the ones I put up here, the ones that we typically encounter in the conversations we have with franchisors across industries. And some of these may resonate with you and what you're dealing with in your business. But if you just look at the lack of marketing knowledge, well, in general, local franchisees, a lot of them are in this line of work because they're entrepreneurs. They want to make a great profit. They don't have the time in a busy day to do local marketing, and a lot of them don't understand digital marketing. So there's really no interest or time to do it. So it kind of gets stuck between like, who is doing it for us. Another aspect is, as I was talking about, it's time consuming and costly. A franchisor, if as I said before, if you take responsibility for doing local marketing across a network of franchisees, you need, I wouldn't say an army of marketeers, but you'll need manpower to get it across, unless you build a system to handle it for you, or some way, or some way created some processes and procedures to deal with it. And then a third aspect of this is also brand consistency, because every time you let someone, a franchisee, you let them do their own local marketing. I mean, a lot of them get a little bit carried away. We see some example in Canva, if you know that software, where they would design their own marketing and put in the logo, and it would definitely not be, I would say, on brand. So there's a risk that that brand equity and brand consistency is not in line with what you want it to be. So looking at these challenges, I think right now could be beneficial to take a step back and just look at how we define local marketing and who's responsible for that in our strategic foundation, and consequently the franchise contracts that we make. And I have to say, I feel quite adamant about this, because in the years I've been working in franchising, it really has been the very loose definitions in the contracts of local marketing and who's responsible for doing it. Had caused so many discussions both internally and with franchisees, that time that could have been well spent doing marketing instead of trying to figure out who's responsible for what and how it should look like. So just try and imagine when you recruit a new franchisee, you probably have a rigorous screening process to determine whether they're fit or not to become a franchisee. Do you want them, as a business partner? In that process, you line out expectations and requirements you want them to meet. And likewise, the franchisee would enter into a business relationship with you having certain expectations to what they're buying into. What is the package that I'm purchasing here? What am I being offered? So in that sense, I feel it's a reciprocal relationship in which each party is expected to deliver what you have agreed. Um, when I was learning, franchising in the kitchen retail industry, um, the term we used, or was used in the organization, was "we do, you do," really to sum up what we meant by franchising. So everyone in the organization and new franchisees would learn what does it mean. It means this is a partnership. This is what you can expect from us. This is what we expect from you. Very clearly defined. And to me, at least, it sums up, everything I really love about franchising, because it's the full package. There's processes and procedures, and manuals for how we do things, and why not why not let that encompass how we do marketing, because it's such an important part of growing the mutual business. Um, so offering a concept for local marketing really strengthens the package, I believe, for established franchise businesses, and also for businesses just starting their franchise journey. So if you conceptualize this aspect of the business, I think you'll to a great extent counter the issues that we saw just before, with the barriers of actually doing this. Yeah, I was just looking at the chat here, Julie. I don't know if you had a chance to.
There's a couple of questions in, Jacob, but I think
Yeah.
we can take them or come to them at the end. Harvey's asked a couple of questions.
Absolutely. So looking at this, we've helped a couple of brands, and I just want to highlight two here. One brand is very interesting, Local Treasures. They've created a framework and set a system in place for their franchisees. It's a business they've actually, and Julie, you know this, you work with Nick and Sarah. I think they've been around since 2013, and just in recent years starting the whole franchising journey. And it's a really, just it's a little bit about the business. They offer cleaners, gardeners, handymen, and I really, it's kind of a love brand for me, because they call the partners here treasures, and they have a really, really nice mission of to reinvest in the community, to offer work over to people over 50 who has acquired all those experience and skills that you will need from handymen. So now they're franchising out their business, and they came to us. We met them about a year ago, because in the process of franchising out their business, they were doing all documentation, getting all the processes and procedures in place, and getting the manuals. And they knew from the beginning, they realized that marketing is going to be an important aspect for us. So how do we offer that as part of the package? So they wanted to include that, as I was touched upon before. They wanted to include that into their franchisees. So when they're meeting new potential franchisees, they could just say, this is the package, and by the way, this is how you do local marketing. This is what we offer you. So they wanted a system to enable them at head office to be in full control of the brand and the communication, but also let the local franchisees use assets and copy that they've collected for them. So basically, they wanted to integrate the local marketing concept as part of the general onboarding for new franchisees. And what I really also like about this case here is that they've also been very aware of owning the local social media pages, which to me is one of the most important points in this when we talk about IP rights. I've come across so many franchise businesses where and let's face it, in franchising, there's good leaves and there's bad leaves. And sometimes there's a disagreement that you'll have a franchisee just, end the contract and move on. But if you don't, if you haven't written down who owns the rights to the social media, or you from the beginning just let them set up their own social media pages, in effect, or in terms of how Meta understands it, they own the pages, meaning they still have control of your branding. So a fundamental thing here that Local Treasures understood is that we want to set up the new pages. So when we onboard a new franchisee, we set up the social media pages and own them, and then we let them manage the pages. In that sense, ownership stays in full control of the brand. And if you haven't thought about this, this is definitely something worth considering, because even very large brands, we are involved with, have been involved with. It can be quite a mess trying to get it settled. Who actually has login to pages? Who owns the rights to this and that? So what we helped them do was we created a platform for them so they can execute this. So the franchisees have assets they can use both for organic and for paid advertising across Meta. It's a framework where they can control their brand, and it's fully automated. So a franchisee basically just logs in and say, I want to activate this campaign, saying that now it's for cleaning, or if it's seasonal, and say, well, we had a winter storm, now we probably need some handyman to tidy up our garden. Then they can just activate that. And everything is set up so the local business area defined by postcodes or radios for the franchisees already set up, so they don't have to log into a Meta Business Suite and try to figure out how things work. Everything is set up for them, and they also get an automatic report and insight. So when a franchisee spends money on their local marketing, they get an automated report. So it's very transparent for them to see this is the effect that we're getting from the money we spend locally. Another case that I would just like to focus on is a more mature franchise chain. And I'm not sure if you know them, but it's a children's franchise. They provide Computer Explorers provide a specialist computing education for children. So they operate out of various schools and nurseries across the country. What they did is they wanted to the primary challenge was that their franchisees are, entrepreneurs. So, if there's no, material for them to use, they'll come up with something, and they love Canva. So they would just, create all these colorful ads that, yes, they're very, they were very colorful and stunning. Well, it was certainly off-brand. So they want something to kind of, they wanted them still to enjoy that freedom to create their own campaigns, but they wanted some more control about the brand and create more brand consistency. So they really wanted to empower their franchisees with some tools and some resources so they could execute local marketing, and also give them some data on performance. So again, here we built a branded template for them to use, so they can activate campaigns across locations. And this is a brand that's very much based around school holidays, if it's October half or summer vacations, and there's some high seasons where they want to get content out there. So they have a more uniform brand look and feel now, but we're actually kind of proud, and Computer Explorers were also very happy about this. When they started using this, we managed to raise local engagement, like the local franchisees' use of their local pages by 50%, because it was so easy for them to get their campaigns or the posts out there. So that definitely helped them build some awareness. And if we want to look at the whole martech or marketing, the marketing landscape, what lies ahead, it's safe to say that development in local digital marketing is going to continue with a very strong emphasis on hyper personalization, user engagement. I'm sure you all have noticed that it's been like that for a while, that when we when we look for sneakers, a new shoe, or whatever online, and suddenly our feed is flooded with these ads. Just to give you an example, that Amazon has been testing out AI predictions in the US, where based on people's purchase history and their account data and what else they can pull from their Amazon accounts, they're now trying out a program where they predict what the customer is going to buy before the transaction has been made. So they're actually shipping the product before the transaction is made with the help of AI. So it's a little bit mind blowing that goes on, and also personally I find it a little bit scary. But I think at some results was an 80% hit rate doing that. And I think that's hyper personalization gone a little bit too far, even though I'm a big advocate for it. But definitely businesses do aim to create more relevant and tailored marketing messages that appeal to individual consumers in the local area. We see it across the businesses we work with. It has a very notable effect on transaction traffic to stores and revenue. But when we venture into this landscape, it involves a deeper understanding of how our customers, the behavior, the preferences, and how can we use all the data that they leave out there to kind of connect with artificial intelligence. And the two areas, not surprisingly, that we're focusing on right now in our digital roadmap, building our scaling our business is obviously AI. I think it would be strange if I wouldn't mention AI. I think you can't go into any meeting today without someone talking about AI. But I feel like it's also kind of like those buzzwords that we talk about, and it's a very elusive term because we also need to understand how we can actually harness that power. But specifically, we're integrating ChatGPT in our platform, so from a very basic level, it can create posts simply just by scraping your websites. So that's just trying to use that, but also video. Video is going to be very predominant now and in the coming years. Stories, reels, they'll become even more important for local businesses. So if your franchisees out there are not too keen on using it, I would suggest you start, talking about them today. About this is going to be a game changer for your business if you know how to use your phone, do a little video, and put yourself out there, because it's going to be I think the predominant media over the coming years on social media. Right. Finishing up here, this little talk about local digital marketing. I feel I would try to leave you with some ideas or advice that I definitely find important when we talk about this particular area. And one thing obviously is, I think that any multi-location or franchise business should adopt a strategy to act local. So make the localized marketing approach an integral part of your strategy, because you can drive awareness, engagement, and sales around your business locations. And I know that many franchisors that I speak to or speak with, they realize this and say, yeah, we need to do it. But as I've tried to highlight in this brief presentation, they're met with some of the things that I've highlighted here, that we don't have the time, we don't, it's costly, so we'll just stick to what we're doing and pray that it'll get us through. But if you do that, I would highly recommend, obviously, using a management platform. Now, there are many systems out there, so pick a system that fit your needs. But my advice would be to adopt that tech mindset and say technology is good, and we can use technology to solve some of these problems for us. So use something that your franchisees can tap into, and then you can use from a headquarter perspective to manage local needs and scale the business. And again, it comes down to where you are on your business journey. What are your needs? There are good platforms, good software out there. So select one that fits your needs and solve the problem that you have. I would also say, as that's why I really, as I highlighted with local treasures, I think think local marketing as part of what you offer in your marketing package. Offer your franchisees a concept and treat it as any other process and procedure you incorporate into your franchise handbook. Don't underestimate the value of that, because that's going to be the building block of that mutual relationship between you and your franchise. And also, stay in control. I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure you stay in control of your brand. Your IP rights are crucial, so make sure you own social media pages. I like to say your franchisees are your caretakers of your brand in every aspect. So make them editors, but stay in control of the pages. And finally, I would say, encourage within, the network of franchisees. I'm sure that, there you have, meetings over a year where you get your franchisees together, but foster a community among your franchisees where they can share the ideas of doing local marketing strategies and share them. So in conclusion here, I would also just like to add that I've over the years, working a lot in franchising as a supplier to franchisors, and especially also working in agencies or in the marketing business, I feel that there is still a gap of understanding between, the unique relationship between a headquarters and their franchisees in marketing businesses, because a lot of them don't want to bother with dealing with franchisees. It's easier for them to deal with the HQ. But yes, it does take some time. But understanding that, I think, very unique relationship that exists is understanding why a supplier as myself has been invited to the table in the first place. Because it's really all about building, solving a problem, and help franchisors and franchisees alike grow their business. All right, that's I think that was it for me.
Great, thank you, Jacob. Certainly from my point of view, I've been taking loads of snapshots of the screen. There's a lot of information, and I think in terms of my overall view of it is that franchisors have got the opportunity to, for want of a better phrase, have the best of both worlds in terms of central brand, central consistency, but they've got the local franchise network. But you've got to take the advantage and put the infrastructure in place. It was interesting, obviously you've used local treasures as one of your case studies, and you say local treasures in effect brought us to you, or you to us, because when they came to us for the development work, they'd already decided that that's what they wanted to include as part of their franchise offer.
And I find that's quite of a unique perspective. I haven't met businesses just starting the franchise journey before. I would love businesses that are starting their franchise journey thinking like that. But this is actually, to be honest, the first business that said, we're offering a full concept, and this needs to be part of our concept. To my experience over the years, when businesses are franchising out, even I've been in franchises with 30 or 35 or 40 units. We say, well, we can manage. But what happens if you when you sit down with sales or a franchise development team and say, well, in 2 years there's going to be 100, and then you need to look at your setup. You need to pressure test the setup you have. Can we manage 100 units within the setup we have today? If the answer is no, then you need to start rethink how you scale your business.
Yeah, and
because
every franchisor on this call knows that it's easier to have the systems in place when you bring the franchisees in then
Yeah.
introduce the systems to the franchisees when they're in place. And the phrase that I've always used, you've obviously got a couple of phrases. The phrase that I've always used is to say to franchisees, and this is the way that we do it. This is the way that we
Yeah.
do the operations. This is the way that we do the marketing. This is the way we do everything. This is the way that we do it. It's already set.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have had some questions, Harvey. You've put a couple of questions in the box, as it were. So if you want to unmute and feel free to just ask one of your questions to Jacob. And I know that Mash has got a question as well. And to say anyone else, feel free to join in for the next 10 minutes. Over to you, Harvey.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. By the way, nice to be here. Thank you to Julie and thank you to Jacob as well. Been fascinating stuff listening to you today. So wanted to say thanks. I had two questions. The first question, you mentioned that Meta can, if you give them a budget and an objective, they can tell you, or they can tell you what you expect to achieve. I find that fascinating and incredible that they can even attempt to do this. But how accurate is that? Those results, are they close to what people do achieve?
Yeah, it's frighteningly accurate. You can when you set up a campaign, you can say, I want this is the geo area that I want to target. So either by postcodes or radios, and I want to include people with these interests. I want that demography. I want that age group. Then Meta, because there as I showed in one of the first slides, there's so many users on Meta that we left so many breadcrumbs and information there. They have detailed information, so that it will just send back and say, well, if you spend £1,000, this is your target audience in this area, so you can expect this result. And it's surprisingly accurate when you do that. But then also, obviously, you have to look at what kind of content are you using, because it's as I said, good content will also award you.
Thank you.
But you can be very, very specific in Meta. And I also say the way the algorithm works is that the longer when you run an account on Meta, the consistency is also, I mean, if content is king, consistency is queen. Because one of the drawbacks of Meta is that if you're an owner franchise and say, well, there's 4 peak periods over a year, so I'm only going to advertise over those 4 peak periods. Meta is going to forget everything about you in between those periods. So you start over every time you go on Meta. But if you just keep a minimal spend or are active on Meta between those periods, the algorithm will award you, because then it already knows you. I know it sounds a little strange, but it already knows about your target group, about the demography and the geolocation. So that's a separate point, and that's kind of a point in itself. Yeah, so understanding how you use Meta and work with the algorithm is really what can set you apart.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. And Harvey, did you have another question?
Can't remember what I put. Let me.
Well, Mash, I know Mash has got a question, so I'll bring Mash in, and Mash can ask his question. I think yours is probably in the chat, Harvey, so we can come back to that.
Hi, Jacob. Fantastic presentation, by the way. Very sort of interesting. I suppose the question I wanted to ask is the question of resources. So, in your extensive experience, what sort of resources, sort of budgets, should franchisors be looking to sort of spend on sort of this sort of marketing strategy? And also, what sort of resources should they be looking to drawing from franchisees? Because obviously, if they don't draw enough sort of income from their franchise network to put into the marketing, then it sort of stunts growth a little bit. So any sort of ideas or any suggestions or recommendations?
Well, there are systems out there that you can use for this. So basically, and now I can only, I won't, plug our own system, but as I said, there's many different systems out there. You can, if you use any of these systems, that it can be a one-person job within your marketing organization. So you could choose to do it on behalf of your franchisees, or you can open up and let the franchisees do it themselves. And it's the way I think you should look at it because I think what you're asking about here is like, what is the business case? You know, is the money spent on using a system for this is, you know, when do we break even? You know, what would we expect that this would generate of extra profit out there? Because the way I see it, and correct me if you have a different, or you know, you may have a different opinion. The way I see it is like a franchisor and franchisees, they're in the same boat. If they make money, franchisor makes money. So I think it's kind of like the same side, but we work with different kinds of setups, you know, with franchisees. Some franchise businesses say, well, this is important for us, so we offer this product to our, you know, franchisees, and others say, you know, this is great, but the franchisees need to, you know, pay their own license. So, you know, there are different ways of doing it. Sometimes, you know, there's kickback models, you know, marketing incentives, whatever. I mean, there's different ways of doing it. Bottom line is that if I feel like if franchisees can visibly see this is having a positive impact for a business, then, you know, then it's worth the investment.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Katrina, I'd just like to ask you a question, because Jacob's mentioned on a couple of occasions about the franchise agreement, and obviously being our representative legal on the event today. Anything that you'd like to add from a legal point of view in terms of what's in the agreement, what isn't, the manuals, etc., to I guess to reinforce the messaging?
Yeah, so obviously most franchise agreements will state that you've got to spend a certain amount of money or a percentage on your own local marketing campaign. It might be that depending on how you want to do it, you could do it that the franchisee, that this is part of their local marketing campaign. They might do other things as well, but this is part of it and they pay for this directly, or whether or not it becomes part of the national marketing campaign and that you as franchisor pay for it as part of that. So it's whichever way you want to do it, but this would be yeah, you can do it either way as long as it's specified in the agreement that it's either part of the franchisee's local marketing spend. I suspect you probably want them to do other local things as well as doing this digital bit, or it can be part of the national if you're obviously going to be doing it for everybody. And this is obviously, it's a really great way of managing it.
Yeah. And I mean, if I can just add to that, I've seen some of the more loose. I completely understand what you're saying because I've, you know, worked with those contracts. But what sometimes, you know, the clever franchisees will say that if you really haven't defined that this kickback or this bonus or whatever, what you call it, needs to go to marketing. If that's too loosely defined, then they would simply just put it on the bottom line and not use it for marketing. So it goes into like, you know, their operation. So that's why I feel kind of strongly about being very, very specific in the contracts about, you know, what constitutes some marketing and how do you do these how you do these agreements.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's worth mentioning for the benefit of people, particularly in the future, who watch these, because we do have a lot of people who watch the recordings. I think, Harvey, one of your points you put about people buying from people, and Jacob, I know that you mentioned at the beginning in effect that, you know, any form of marketing can only, you know, generate a level of interest, and then it's down to the individual who is potentially the franchisee to take that forward. And, you know, again, the complaint that the marketing doesn't work, the lead generation doesn't work, is often down to the fact that the leads are being generated, the marketing is working, but actually the way that it's being handled and managed when the lead's being generated is really where the area of weakness is, and ultimately that's down quite often to the individual franchisee. And Katrina would put a post about, you know, buying things, and we've all had situations where we've particularly from a physical face-to-face, we've gone in to buy something, whether it's an ice cream or a car, and we've ended up not buying it because the person that was going to sell it to us, for whatever reason, we didn't like, we didn't get on with, we didn't engage with. And if we chose not to give them our £3 for the ice cream or however many £1,000 for the car, basically. So again, in terms of franchising, the marketing can only do so much. And then it's down to the franchisee and whether that's a training requirement. If things aren't working, it's another area of you know, to
I completely agree, and I can share with you that some of the post or content that we see most successful out there and actually generate the most leads is when the business owner puts himself on camera, or they just present themselves in a post, because you interact with the community. And as I said before, I don't think we should underestimate the fact that we like to do business with someone we feel we know.
yeah.
This is someone who's part of our community, and especially in franchising, where we carefully select the geographical location we want to work out of. We've done the due diligence. We've researched why we should be there. Why not be a solidified part of the local community and capitalize on that, because there is a huge potential in utilizing that.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I know Harvey's on the call today, and Harvey runs his podcast twice a week, and one of them is around brands and brand stories with Simon Wise, who's not here.
Yeah.
You know, the whole essence is to get yourself out there as a franchisor or as a franchisee, and let people know who you are, what you are, how you sound, how you look, so that the barriers are starting to be broken down, and hopefully people feel more engaged and hopefully more likely to start to make an approach to either potentially become franchisee or buy your product or service from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the event and the people attending today. We've just the final point that I would like to make is obviously those are Jacob's details. Put it on there for the recording. Jacob's details, and obviously anyone that's on today, please feel free to contact with Jacob directly, and he's
Absolutely
very knowledgeable and very helpful basically. And thank you very much again, Jacob. And we have
Thank you.
We have an event planned for August, which we don't do. We've got an event in August, and I'm delighted to say that the event in August is actually a very, very, very interesting lady called Zakia Guri, who runs a charity called Invisible Cities, and it's the first social franchise that we featured on our First Friday events. And just by a little bit way of introduction, Zakia came from a background in tourism. She then had experience in working with people who'd experienced homelessness, and for want of a better word, she put her two areas of skill and expertise and knowledge together to develop Invisible Cities, which is a charity that engages with people who have experienced homelessness and basically trains them to become city guides. So if you go to Edinburgh or Chester or York, you can have an alternative city tour from one of the Invisible Cities tour guides. And it's a very interesting, very, worthwhile, great social business. And Zakia is our guest for next month. So thank you. We will